Hi, I'm making a short video explaining the MLA format. In the old days, people used to turn in papers on paper, and what would happen is that a professor would get a stack of, 100 papers or whatever. And so there would be a staple up here and your first name here, um, and the last name up here so that a professor could flip through this corner and just easily recognize students' names. And that's really where MLA formatting comes from, that we just wanted to standardize ways that students wrote paper so that certain information would be very easy to access through a paper document. Now, of course, it's largely more of a formality, but the second reason we use MLA is because we do want, when we say, a 3 to 4 page paper, all the students' papers to look exactly the same, so that 3 to 4 pages would mean the same thing for all students. Of course, now we have word counts and we have the ability to understand margins very easily. And so, but let me just go over the main things that you need to be thinking about for MLA formatting. The paper should be formatted 1 inch all around. You should have a header, and when you double click up at the top of the document, you enter the header dialog with your last name and the page number. The best way to do that is to click on page number, go to top of page, and click number 3, since that's the one that's going to put it in the top right hand corner. And you can do it that way, or you can just double click. I've set up the formatting now. And again, this is just so that in the old days, if papers were to fall apart, the staple would come undone. Professors would be able to recognize how to put them back together. Your name and last name, my name, the class name, class section, number, so it's Advanced English Composition 105 Z1, the date, and because of the Y2K scare a while back, we started getting rid of commas or any other punctuation in dates, and so that's why MLA started putting it day, month, year, so you wouldn't have to use punctuation. Now, 2-part titles, that's totally up to you. I think when you get into larger papers where you need to be both referencing the main text, article or ad or something like that, and explaining a little bit about what your paper's about, you need to get into a 2-part title. So I'm just encouraging students to get used to that now. The paper then would be organized with all paragraphs indented, no spaces in between, and everything double-spaced. For these kinds of assignments, like an intro, there's, a starting toward MLA formatting. And so, the outline might make sense if you have the intro on one page. The outline might make sense to start it on the second page. Because then when you get to the works cited page, the works cited, one work cited for just one text and multiple works cited for multiple works. This should always begin at the top of the new page after your document. And I started you off with a sample of how to cite an ad, but let me go over how best to use available resources to do this in all of your classes. So if any class says that they want MLA formatting, or if they want Chicago or APA, you can always come to the Purdue Online Writing Lab and look at their particular style sheets. I think they have most of them right there in research and citation. But here it does, again, give you an overview of, it gives you an overview of what needs to be in the citations. And again, we formalize these, we standardize these so that professors know how to find these sources. And when it was on paper, the more information, the better, because the professor would have to go and hunt down the source in some way. And but yeah, now it's kind of a formality, but we are still requiring all the information so that we can go and find the source. But really, the larger idea with MLA has become that we expect students to understand that most documents, when they are submitted publicly, will be formally edited, and your ability to put all of the little periods where they belong, to cite the source correctly is sort of like dressing up for work, right? The more you do this correctly, the more it looks like you put time and effort into the project that you are completing. So, becoming familiar with the rules and adopting them in your writing is a way of showing that you put time, effort, and care into the product that you're producing. So here at the OWL, you will find almost an inclusive, totally inclusive list of ways to cite many different kinds of sources. Every now and then you'll encounter a source that's a little harder to find how to cite it. But it takes some digging, right? Back in the old day, we used to hold books for this, and we used to just go into the books and try to find the different kinds of citations in the book, and then do our best to figure out how to do it. But notice it's broken down into two kinds of information: formatting quotations, in-text citations, which is what happens inside your paper, and then the works cited page. And so when you get to the works cited page, you have a general overview of basics that you need to know: how to cite when you have a source with more than one author, how to cite when you don't know who the author is, etc. And then the fun part, the scavenger hunt begins. So you have to ask yourself, what kind of source do I have? Do I have a periodical or a newspaper or a magazine, a review, an editorial, articles in a scholarly journal? And now, of course, when you go to the library and you find this kind of information, which we will do for the last paper, there's a whole place where you can just click cite the source for me and it does it for you, which is great. But it's often nice to go back and look at the way that we used to have to do it, which is just to know what source we are citing. Another function of the MLA Works Cited page is a communication with your reader that you are citing particular kinds of sources that, of course, carry a particular weight. So a scholarly journal, an academic publication, is going to have a lot of experts reading it, at least 4 to 6, maybe 10 in best case scenarios. Whereas a newspaper is going to have an editor read it, and it's going to be one person, maybe a little bit of a crack team together doing it, and it's something that gets written really fast. They're just trying to make sure that the facts are right, and then often they won't be right. So you'll get this editorial in the next newspaper edition saying like, whoops, we made a mistake, or now it appears at the bottom, like in the first version of this article, we made a mistake, and the following things were wrong and we've corrected them. So we have different weights of information. And for the first two papers, I'm saying it's okay to use newspapers, especially established newspapers like the Washington Post or the New York Times or the Boston Globe. But we are moving more and more toward the kind of paper that's going to ask you to use more weighty sources. And so there's going to be a library thing that I'm going to post, etc. But right now, you also want to be looking at the electronic sources that we've been using. So if you are citing websites or government websites, that information is here. Web magazines, online scholarly sources, like Google Scholar. And, now we have the YouTube video, which is just what you've been mainly using. Or you can kind of use the same thing, and instead of putting YouTube, put like Donald Trump .com or whatever his website is, and obviously sponsored by Donald Trump, so it'd be like Donald Trump, or whatever the name of his campaign is. So yeah, use the resources available to you to start trying to get the MLA citation into the best shape possible, and do email me if you have any questions. Note too that there's a sample works cited page so that you can go and look to see, oh yeah, the hanging indent. Let me review that. So like when you have a source, let's say you filled out the information, it's going to look like this. It's just going to be a regular, there's no spaces between these pieces of information. So the best thing to do is to highlight the whole thing and click Control T. That produces the hanging indent. If you accidentally hang the indent too much, you hit Control T twice or something, you can just hit Control Shift T and that will move you back. So Control T moves it forward, Control Shift T moves it back. This is not a citation, so that would not have a hanging indent. The other thing that you can do is click Control A. That highlights the entire document that is not in the header, and you can, if you choose, make changes to the entire document. Here you can also hit Control 1 to make everything single spaced, and then Control 2 to go back to double spaced. You always want to be aware of spacing. Typically, this should always be at 0, the after spacing, so that you don't end up with weird spacing in between. And notice that I'm still editing the entire document this way, because the entire document should be double spaced, and it should not have any extraneous spaces between pieces of information. Yeah, and then Control Z always just moves you right back to where you started. Okay, cool. So good luck with the citation. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.